I'm Sal Abenanti, and I'm here on Kickstarter to ask for your support to produce my 115-page color graphic novel, The Hostage. Hostage is set in the streets of Rio de Janeiro, based on the plight of the street children that live in the favelas. In the world of the graphic novel, being murdered daily, and the hostage is the evil spirit that is raised to avenge their death. Origins go all the way back to the indigenous tribes of the Amazon as the spirits that protect children, especially murdered children. The level of death that these kids have to endure every day. They have nowhere to sleep. They have no place to eat. They have to survive off of begging. There were nobody in capes that were coming to save these kids.
The Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here, expecting Dennis Helpless Hallum any moment. Dennis, you know from all of his fine work, whether it's Exo right now over at Valiant, Exo Man of War, and of course, he had two great series that wrapped up in 2020. Spider-Man Black Cat miniseries, and also the Cosmic Ghost Rider, which of course featured Frank Castle as the Avenging Angel. Pretty cool. Interesting stuff, and I want to talk more about what's going on with Dennis, but Dennis isn't here yet, so I'm going to give a chance to talk a bit to you guys and women that are watching, and it's good to see everybody. I'm thinking about doing a review show for Superman and Lois Lane because I love Superman, and have mostly enjoyed the CW shows. God, I was just catching up on Black Lightning, in fact, today. And so I'm thinking about that. What do you guys think? Is that a possibility? Is that something I should do? Let me know in the comments. And look, he's here, so I'm going to welcome him right now, everybody. It's Dennis Hopeless Hallum. Oh man,
Hey, John. How you doing?
Good, buddy. Good to see you.
You too. Sorry, it took me a minute to get my setup. I was editing video on the other side of the table, so I had to rewire everything really quickly.
Nice. What are you working on?
I have kind of an off-the-shelf period where I'm only doing Exo Man of War right now that's coming out, and everything else is creator-owned stuff for next year. So
Great.
what I've been doing is recording a lot of conversations with other creators and my other buddies and chopping them up just to throw online.
I can't relate to that at all.
Yeah, you understand.
That's excellent, man. Seriously, what are you still setting it up? Have you started putting it out there yet, or are you just putting it all together now?
I'm kind of just throwing stuff against the wall and see what sticks. Kyle Strom and I are doing a WandaVision watch thing where we watch WandaVision and talk about it. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's excellent. The first thing. And then I'm doing these comic creator origin stories, which are just little 3-minute interviews where people tell their breaking into comic story. So I've been doing those for social media. And
that's great, man.
Yeah, it's fun. It's new. I went to school for this. Like I got a creative writing degree and a video production degree 100 years ago. And now you can do stuff on your phone that I couldn't do in an Avid suite in 2002. So it's pretty awesome.
Dennis, I have the 80s version of that story. I guess the 90s version of that story because I graduated college in the late 80s. And back then I was like, you know, if I save like $5,000, I could build a home studio, and,
Right.
and only audio back then. And thank God for the digital revolution, because now everything is an app and that much easier. And I love it. And I mean, obviously, I started just doing video about a year ago.
Right.
Right at the beginning of the pandemic. So no, that's awesome. And really, man, I welcome intelligent conversation, and I think that's good. So I'm glad you're doing this.
Yeah, well, I realized I was spending a lot of my time, since the quarantine, just talking to my friends about things that we're interested in, and it seemed like the easiest thing in the world is just to take those conversations and put them online. I don't know how interesting they are, but they're there if anyone wants to see
No,
them.
that's honestly, man, I think it's great. One of the things I always loved about reading all the great comic magazines of the 80s and the 90s was you're really getting conversations with these creators at the moment, what they're thinking about at the moment. And truly, man, no, I think that's great that you're doing this. And it's something that, again, I think will hopefully live on beyond its release and everything. And I honestly, Danny Fingeroff and I talk about this all the time, that we really need to like create just a general like comic book like place where all the interviews can go, and everyone just hey, let's whoever, because hey, that's this is how we're documenting the what's going on in comics and everything. And I think there should be an easier way for everybody to find everything.
Yeah, when there's so much noise now. You post something even on social media to your followers, 90% of them aren't going to see it because they've got so much other stuff whizzing by. So
100%.
it's kind of nice to have some stuff that lives a little bit more permanently.
Yeah.
And then I can chop up the little funny bits and throw those on Twitter or whatever. So.
Sure. Are you do you already have then a YouTube channel where you're doing WandaVision?
Sort of. I did. Cullen Bunn and I had a show called Missouri Swagger where we would, it was sort of a podcast, sort of a YouTube show. It was completely unstructured. And I think Cullen eventually got so frustrated with me for not having a point or an idea every week that he dipped out.
Okay.
And so we have the Missouri Swagger YouTube channel. And then I have just my own personal one attached to my Gmail. It's all very lo-fi and very like, let's figure this out, make it good, and then I'll start talking about it more. And WandaVision was the easiest thing in the world to do because Kyle and I were watching it anyway. So we kind of
sure. Now, I'll embarrass myself and say I'm 3 episodes behind just because I've been busy. And literally, as I was saying, I don't know how much you caught before I popped you in, but yeah, I was like, next week was Superman and Lois Lane, or Superman and Lois. I'm like, I'm gonna watch that. I'm obviously gonna watch that. I've already set my DVR to get it and everything. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll do a review show of that, because I was doing Star Trek and shaking my fist at Star Trek.
Of course you were.
So,
what's your take? You're an old TV guy, right? Like, what's your take on?
I'm a really old TV guy. Go ahead.
What's your take on the WandaVision, like the throwback sitcom stuff? What do you think?
I think it's hilarious. I am on episode 4, but I know what's going on, and that's fine. No, I love it. I think it's hilarious. I know some people have complained about the pacing,
right?
And I can appreciate that, but especially the way I'm watching it, it's not bothering me at all. And I really did appreciate the level of detail to really make it look like the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah, it's so much fun. I grew up on a lot of the stuff I watched whenever I was very small was from well before I was born, just because we didn't have cable, and that's what they reran all the time during the day. So yeah, I've probably seen more episodes of Dick Van Dyke and I Love Lucy than the 80s and 90s sitcoms that were on at the time.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I love it too.
And even more directly, Bewitched and the Brady Bunch in terms of layouts of their houses and stuff like that. No, it's funny, and dude, believe me, I'm several years ahead of you. But that said, we were watching the same shit back then when it was only a 5-channel world, and they were showing those reruns on all the UHF channels and everything. So yeah, no, there's a reason why that shit keeps playing. It's funny, it's good. Even
and then there's nothing like it anymore, like
no.
I think it's kind of the point of the show is that stuff, it just changed so much as it went along that it's fun to go watch where it started.
Oh, 100%. And also, man, I'll tell you, and boy, I do sound like an old man, but like Two Broke Girls, and I use them as an example. I know they're off the air, but it's funny. I was watching today. I noticed that Kevin James has a new sitcom on Netflix, The Crew. And it's totally like about a pit crew for NASCAR kind of racer or whatever. And it's like, I don't know, everyone's just standing around throwing lines as opposed to there actually being like a point to the plot. And
Right.
and I mean, that used to drive me nuts about two broke girls. Is they literally are just like in a lineup and just all facing the camera and hey, one liner, yeah, so's your old man. Oh yeah, that one. I'm like, wow, man, comedy sucks now.
Well, and I think those shows like Big Bang Theory always felt like this to me. And maybe it's because I didn't watch episode to episode. I'd catch it when it was on. But it seems like they're making moments to live online as clips more than they're making a 25-minute story.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just kind of starts and stops, and it ends at some random point because they ran out of time. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know. Again, thank God sketch comedy is making up for all the bad sitcoms, I think.
Right.
So at least there's good sketch comedy still going on TV. But no, I've noticed that EXO is really your focus this year. And well, that's why I threw up images of last year's Marvel stuff that you were doing. Among them, the Black Cat series with Spider-Man and also the Cosmic Ghost Rider.
Yes.
So that stuff was awesome. Yeah, if you don't mind, before we get into XO, let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was doing a lot of different things at Marvel. I mean, I've been at Marvel for whatever 10, 11 years now.
Yeah.
But then all of that stuff got frozen at the beginning of COVID, and for various reasons, everything I had lined up paused and then died, or paused and then finished after the pencils back up or whatever. And I took the opportunity in the middle of it to kind of dig out old creator-owned stuff. Because unlike most people, I'm not super prolific. I can only write so many books. And so when Marvel was keeping my plate full, I didn't do a lot of creator-owned stuff. I would set stuff up, occasionally doing things. Jason and Stephen Green and I have Sea of Stars and Image, but I never had the time or the bandwidth to do it. And I was trapped in this house with my 2 6-year-olds for months and months. So what I replaced all that Marvel stuff with is a whole bunch of creator-owned stuff, which is amazing and fun to do different genres and kind of only have one superhero book for a minute. But yeah, I only have, at the moment, the only stuff I can talk about is old, vaguely in the future, and then XO Manowar.
Cool. Well, let's talk about the old for a second then. And let's talk about, like I said, let's talk about Cosmic Ghost Rider. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that book was super fun.
Yeah,
it was.
It's. I mean, forgive me. Was yours the first Cosmic Ghost Rider? Frank Castle becoming Ghost Rider? Is this already a Marvel precedent that I missed?
Yeah, Donny Cates created it with Jeff Shaw, I think.
Okay.
And
was this back in the Tradmore, or no? That was after the Tradmore stuff, right? With Ghost Rider.
It was. I mean, it's around the same. I've read it all. I read it when it was coming out, and I read it for research again whenever I was doing it. But life has been really weird since then. So yeah, Donnie did a couple of different arcs. There was the initial one that created the character and kind of explained where he came from, and then there was another follow-up arc that he did, and then I believe Paul Shearer did an arc before mine. So it's been around for a couple of years. But it's a wild premise. Yeah.
And did you partially, I know pencils went down because of COVID and the diamond complications and all of that. But I also know that the Punisher got a little toxic for a second. Now, this iteration of the Punisher is really far removed from modern, street level Frank Castle and stuff like that. But was that at all an impact on your book?
No, in fact, we were done. We were done making it. I believe it was even drawn. Maybe it's possible that Scott was still drawing it when Pencils Down happened. So I may have gotten a lettering draft after, but it was just a diamond issue. So we were pretty much done and moving on. And we actually were going to do another arc on the book after that got paused and then fell off the schedule for some other reason. But no, as far as I know, the Punisher stuff didn't affect us.
Okay, that's cool. Because, yeah, man, literally, I mean, I spoke to Deck Shalvey and we previewed the first issue, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that's not happening, and it's like, okay, I mean, again, I mean, you take the temperature in the room, and certainly I can appreciate those that are uneasy about the Punisher in today's environment, and I shrug. It's like, well, to me it's make believe, but okay, I get it. And unfortunately, the emblem was used in a lot of real demonstrations and stuff. So
sure, I mean, so yeah, it's a weird thing because he's always he's never been a super heroic character. Like
No.
he's not even really an anti-hero. He's just a villain that we follow and I think is interesting.
I agree.
So it does. Yeah, it's got to be that sort of thing's got to be challenging for Disney of all people to have this big character that's tied up in a bunch of crazy, awful stuff that's also really polarizing because some people think it's ridiculous that we're worried about it, and other people don't ever want to see that skull again.
Right, exactly. And I will even confess, usually being very liberal, I'm kind of like, yeah, this is make believe and take it easy. But again, I whatever. I mean, I can appreciate, and if you're going to piss off potentially half your audience, why do it? So, right. I mean, it's, I don't know, very complicated.
That's a rough needle to thread right now, because I feel like not only are we really polarized, but we're really angry at the other side. But which other side of what are you falling on? Everyone's so upset all the time. You're absolutely right. And there's so little conversation. Like even with family members, normally you just ignore your family members' political nonsense.
You are absolutely right, man. No, it's true. It's unbelievable. And thank God Easter's coming up. So there's your next Zoom argument with the family. Right. Look forward to it, everybody. No, I hear you, man. Have you been hassled by any of the political stuff?
Not professionally. I remember when the Comicsgate stuff first started up several years ago. I very stupidly dipped in for a very brief moment on Twitter and learned my lesson. I'm like, this conversation doesn't have that much to do with me, so I'm just going to not. But I'm also lucky I get left alone. Straight, white, middle-aged guy. For the most part, I get left alone. But yeah, I think the easiest way to promote your work is to just let people be wrong. If people want to say things that are wrong and they're not doing me any harm, I'll leave them alone for the most part.
Sure.
But a little bit personally, like I'm from the Midwest, so I've got some family members that skew on the exact opposite side of the political spectrum from me. And I believe in that case, when you have a personal relationship, it's worth the conversation.
I completely agree. Yes.
If you can treat it with respect and understand that just because someone's wrong doesn't make them a monster, and have the conversation knowing you're probably not going to change their mind, but you can do it without yelling, I think it's worth the energy.
I agree. I have an older cousin who's 70, and he's like my older brother, and by a good 15 or so years, and he I mean, that's our conversations, and we're both civil to each other, and we know we're not going to convince the other guy, but it's like, hey man, I respect you. Tell me what you see that I don't see. Explain it to me. And that's all I'm looking for. And it's like, okay, I just want to understand where you're coming from. That's all.
And I think we've lost that. So it's good to be able to do that with people that you trust to be able to talk to the next day.
Right.
I've actually found, weirdly, on Facebook, high school friends who disagree with me that I can talk to because they're not comics fans. They're not going to affect my career. It's not going to. It's just a personal conversation with people who have, a similar upbringing but a different perspective. So that's been kind of fun. But you have to have that eject button ready to go in case it gets too heated. I
hear you, man. No, it's a shame, and especially written text to text versus really speaking to someone, because there really is something nuanced about context that sometimes gets lost when it's just typed. And it's like, what do you mean by that? And it's like, yeah, I was kidding. Sorry, I didn't put an LOL in there. Good Lord. Anyway, back to comics, and let me ask you about the Black Cat miniseries that you did, and so Gamerverse is this continuity, obviously, of the video games and stuff.
That project. Before we jump to that, I just want to say that Scott Hepburn, who drew my Cosmic Ghost Rider run, is amazing, and everybody should go check out all of his work. He's doing, or probably already done, a MODOK series.
That's perfect for him. Sure.
Recently, and he's an amazing guy. awesome guy to talk to and to come up with comics together. But also his art is fantastic. So everybody check him out.
I must say, I agree with you, man. No, it really fit this series. And as soon as you said MODOK, it's like, oh, absolutely, he should be doing a MODOK series. That's fantastic. That's excellent, man. So then, back to Black Cat then. Tell me about this miniseries.
So yeah, from my perspective, Gamerverse was an ongoing that I wrote for almost 2 years, because we started with an adaptation of the PlayStation game, the most recent that's not Miles' PlayStation 4 Spider-Man game, the big one. So we did sort of a 6-issue adaptation of the plot from the
game itself,
main story of the game.
Yeah.
And then I got to tell stories inside that universe that
took
place in and around some of the downloadable content, and then just some fresh stuff. So we did Velocity, which is a brand new story. We did the Black Cat story, which includes the downloadable content from the game that came after the initial story of the game, but also was a brand new story.
Cool.
So it's a little bit of a weird job, because some of it was tied to the game and other stuff was just me alone in the Spider-Man universe nobody else could touch. That was a lot of fun. And I actually was writing, I was 2 issues deep into a prequel to the Miles Morales game that tied the two things together. And because of COVID, the game, well, it wasn't even that. The game release got pushed, and it was going to be released as a special edition with the game. And we didn't know when the game was going to happen. So that one was supposed to keep going. And then they're like, we have no dates. Like, this just doesn't make sense anymore.
Wow.
So somewhere there's 2 issues of a 4-issue prequel to that game out there that will never see the light of day.
Well, maybe when Spider-Verse comes back, maybe they'll ask you to finish it or something, the animated movie.
Oh yeah, that's true. It could. The cool thing about that is I got to see a lot of stuff from the game before it came out, and I got a lot of behind the scenes stuff on the previous game. And the Marvel Games people really, they're like Disney with the parks. Like, they throw so much story work and energy into all of that ahead of time that it was fun to work with them. It sounds like maybe not that great of a job to be adapting a video game, but that video game is a really cool story, and it's super rich. And the world they created for it is unique and interesting. So it was fun to play in that.
That's awesome, man. I'm embarrassed that I'm kind of showing my Marvel weakness of late, that I wasn't aware you were doing this. So I apologize that I didn't know this has been going on for 2 years and everything.
Yeah, no worries.
So, but I do know about Exo Man of War, of course. I was bummed, man. We had you on Baltimore Comic-Con, and I had done so many panels that I had to give some up and everything. And unfortunately, us talking about XO back then wasn't going to happen. So now we do get to talk about it.
Yes.
And man, hey, congratulations. It's a fun run. And I think you're trying to build on his immediate world and get more supporting characters going and stuff.
Yeah, that was an interesting challenge, because they wanted to take the character in a new direction without letting go of the awesome stuff that came before, because that book's been really strong since the relaunch in 2012, and they had mined so much stuff that we had to find like a new thing to do with them. And what Heather Antos came to me with whenever she asked me to pitch the book, who's the editor, was let's lean into the superhero thing. Like, let's have him be on Earth in the here and now, and what does Exo Man of War as a modern superhero look like? And we also really wanted to build up his friendship, his relationship with Shanhara, the sentient suit that he wears.
Right, the AI, absolutely.
Yeah, and so that has been really fun. It's been interesting. Valiant fans are extremely passionate and opinionated, and so that was a fun thing to dive into, because I had pitched several things at Valiant over the years, but other than just being an occasional reader, I didn't know much about it. And it's a really fun group of fans. So yeah, we're building up Eric Rx life on modern Earth, and he's a super powerful ancient warrior in a crazy alien suit, who doesn't really care that much about what modern people think about him trying to save them. And it creates a lot of interesting problems. So
Yeah, no, it's fun. Absolutely, man. It's, putting one of those sword and sandal warriors into an Iron Man kind of suit, but with more sci-fi and more alien tech as well. And yeah, I no, and hilarity ensues. I mean, it's what where is or Eric, is it how do you say it? Do you say Eric or do you say I'm gonna say it like that?
I say Eric because
Okay.
I know a human in the real world whose name Eric is spelled that way.
Oh, okay.
Everyone at Valiant says Arik, so I don't know how it's supposed to be
I hear
pronounced.
you, man. All right, and I'm going to get to Ed's question in a second. He's got an oldie to bring up. I'm glad you're bringing this up, Ed. But where is where is he in his hero's journey in terms of how comfortable? I mean, has he had much time on modern day Earth?
At the issue 1, so issue
Right.
4, I think, just came out because we had a big COVID break.
Right.
At issue 1, he's been back for a while. He doesn't really have any interest in an alter ego or a normal life or whatever. He's like, I can hunt what I need to eat and I'm here to help people, whatever. And Shanhara thinks that's insane and says you have to live as a modern human. You have to lean into this. And he kind of finds a found family in this neighborhood that adopts him as he's breaking shit and messing things up and becoming a pariah on the news while trying to help people. So yeah, by where we are now, by the end of the first arc, he's been there a few months and he's been embraced not only by this community, but by an Elon Musk-esque billionaire that wants to teach him about PR and how once you get the people behind you, you can get away with anything and you can really do good. So that's where he's at now. So he has kind of figured it out and he's starting to ride the wave. And then now, of course, bigger, crazier, scarier threats are entering the fray as he gets his bearings.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Is it Toby or what's his name?
Troy.
Troy
Whitaker is the name. Yeah.
Say it again.
Troy Whitaker is the name.
Troy Whitaker, absolutely. So yeah, he's kind of like your Max Lord, if you will.
Yes.
Basically. That's awesome.
Yeah, the guy that would normally be in the suit is like a manager that's trying to help him with the PR. So it's fun.
That's awesome. No, and again, much like his conversations with his AI and everything, it's like, yeah, a lot of counterculture, a lot of culture clashing and everything.
Right.
That's awesome, man. No, that's great. And like the hardcore EXO people are digging it.
Yeah. Initially, I think they were like, "This isn't what I'm used to. What the hell are you guys doing?" But I think we've proven that it's still the Eric they know in the suit. He's just in a sort of an uncomfortable situation for him.
Sure.
And yeah, we really wanted to build the community of around him so you understand the world he's living in now. And then there's lots of punching things and destroying, stomping stuff underfoot too. That's fun.
Now, Ed has a question dipping back in your old Marvel days and said he really enjoyed your X-Men season 1 with Jamie McKelvey. Were there ever plans for a season 2 book?
Those season 1 books, that was my second paid work ever and my second book at Marvel. I snuck in the door by sending them a bunch of unpublished stuff that I claimed was published, waited 11 months, and then an editor finally flipped through my packet and was like, "Oh, this stuff's pretty good. You want to pitch a Legion of Monsters miniseries that Kieran Gillen was supposed to write, but that didn't have time for?" So I pitched and got this 4-issue Legion of Monsters miniseries. And then while I was working on it, Alejandro Arbona was my editor, and whoever the original writer of X-Men season 1 was had quit. And Jamie was already on board. He'd already done character designs, but they had me pitch it from scratch. And I misunderstood the point. Like I thought I kept pitching a bunch of retcons and stuff with Magneto being at the school and all this different weird stuff. And they're like, no. It's exactly what happened in the Kirby Lee X-Men original issues. But there's like iPhones. Like you need to make this modern as if it happened today. So we're just going to slide the timeline up. And it didn't compute. I didn't understand that. So what I ended up doing was like a dance between the raindrops story where I tell this like teen drama that happens between the fights exactly as you saw them. Everybody else who had that job just did exactly like they just told the story, but with modern language and clothes. So I made the job very difficult for myself. And I had been told they were going to be digital single issues that were later collected in trade. And then that shifted into a graphic novel collection, and it came out as hardbacks. Now, the awesome part for me, and what sort of launched my career, is they were all New York Times bestsellers because Barnes & Noble ordered a ton of them because they were easy, like new reader fodder. And mine, because it was sort of unique in that it was trying to do something interesting, got a lot of eyeballs and heat on it. And because they sold well, and because mine did pretty well, yes, there was talk of doing a season 2 for like 3 months. And then they were going to do more season 1s, and they brought new characters in. And I think by the time they had 2 or 3 rounds of them, the interest inside the building kind of just moved on. And they were a little bit weird. There were $25 hardcovers that had 100 pages. So they were great for selling at cons and making $25. And they sold pretty well in
bookstores.
But yeah, they never really made sense at the direct market, which I think is why they eventually didn't do the season 2. But we talked about it. It was a possibility.
So was it Warren and Scott fighting over Jean, or what? I'm trying to remember my Kirby Lee early X-Men continuity that might have had some romance beyond the usual pining and everything. So yeah.
What I did was I told the story from Jean's perspective as she gets to the school, because she's barely a character in those early stories. Like, the guys are all in love with her, and she uses her powers to like cut cake and give them all pieces of it. And so I just told her story as if, like, when you turn the cameras off, Jean's story was happening.
Okay.
Which is how we told that.
That's cool. That's great, man. See, yeah. I remember, I talked to Fowler when he did the Hulk year 1. I think with Fred. I can't remember who he did that one with, but I know
that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that's what I was going to say. I remember talking about that year 1 book, and I'm sure I talked about a couple others.
Yeah. Cullen Bunn did Spider-Man, because I know he did that one.
Who drew that? Do you remember? I don't. Yes,
it might have been Bagley. It was somebody it was like Mark Bagley.
Wow.
Yeah,
and that would make sense because I know they wanted that kind of, like you said, tell the same story, but with iPhones. Essentially, they wanted that, and they wanted that kind of new Marvel look of the early 2000s and everything. So, and Bagley's like kind of a good representation of that basic style.
No, they were fun. And when mine found new life on the internet afterward, like I said, they sold in bookstores pretty well at the time. And then Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men, which is an amazing podcast if you guys don't listen to it.
Oh, yeah.
They love the book. And so they're shipping it online. Yeah, so I get more people talking about it now than I did at the time.
That's fantastic. See, that's very good for you guys. Nice going. That's wonderful. Honestly, again, more of my weakness, and unfortunately, usually folding in a lot of Dennis Hopeless books, I'm just not an X-Men guy, and that's why, was it Avengers Arena? What was the Arena book that you did?
Yeah, I did Avengers Arena and Avengers Undercover.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I do. I live in your blind spots. I lots of Marvel teen characters that you don't care about, and
I know, and it blows me out, Dennis, because seriously. We've got the conversations in our brains to prove it. We always talk well, and it's always fun. So I'm really glad that it was like, I don't know. Well, I guess I saw obviously what's going on with XO, and also, do you have a one shot coming up? Or maybe not. I don't know what's been announced.
No, I don't think none of the other stuff I have lined up has been announced yet. I don't think, unless I'm completely blanking on something. Because when I say that I pulled out creator-owned books, I have 6 lined up at 6 different publishers. I think I was really freaked out more than I realized at the time, and so I just grabbed at everything. And the end result is now, things are open back up. There are jobs to be had, and I'm just super busy on my own stuff, which is kind of great because it's fun to be playing in that world. Absolutely. And also it's a little bit weird. Like, I haven't had this long a stretch without Marvel work in forever.
I understand. Did you see that Neil Edwards drew Spider-Man year 1? I had it on the screen.
Okay. Well, there you go. I was wrong.
Corrected us, but that's very good. We want to get the story right. That's cool. Yeah, man. No, it's, again, like you say, you've been dealing with so give me some of the teen books you've been doing lately.
It's been a minute. Let's see.
Yeah, I gotta go. I'm gonna even go back and look at my Marvel Unlimited. And
so my Marvel run, I did Arena and Undercover and Cable and X-Force, and then I was on All New X-Men and Jean Grey were teen books that I did for a while.
Right.
And then I did a very brief run on Doctor Strange. I did Cloak and Dagger digital series.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's cool. Did that tie into the show, or was
that was another weird one. So that book and the digital Jessica Jones book that Kelly did, they were supposed to be part of a Comixology focused Marvel launch that were tied into the TV shows. Yeah, so when the Cloak and Dagger show came out, and then they were doing season 2, I guess, of the Jessica Jones show. And right as Comixology was about to announce it, they announced Comixology Originals. And so it kind of got lost in the shuffle. So those digital books came out with very little fanfare, and then eventually were released as print editions later. So while it was happening, it was kind of an odd deal. But no, hers are fantastic. Those Jessica Jones books are super fun. And I've gotten to write more issues of Cloak and Dagger than almost anybody in the last 25 years because we did two arcs on it. So that was super fun. But I don't know if anybody saw them.
Well, I'm looking at them now on Marvel Unlimited, so that's cool. Tell me about the Vader series, Dark Visions.
Yeah, and then I got an opportunity to do that, that's a super cool series. It's sort of like the POV episode of Batman the Animated Series. So every issue is a story told by a NPC basically in the Star Wars universe who rubs up against Darth Vader. So and then each one is sort of a different genre based on the perspective of the person that's telling a story. So the first one's a little boy that lives on a planet that has been devastated by a Godzilla-esque giant dragon thing. And he and his fellow humanoids live underground for most of the year, except for when the beast is sleeping. And they come up to get food when the beast is asleep. Well, Darth Vader's TIE fighter crashes into the Godzilla creature and he has to fight it. And he ends up, he's fighting and killing this beast that is the monster of their planet. So from this little boy's perspective, across the way, this is like an epic tale of an avenging knight who's come to save them. But really it's just Vader trying, surviving this battle versus thing. So that one's like this big, epic knight tale. And then one of them's a horror story told from the perspective of a commander on a Star Destroyer that knows Vader's going to come and kill him. And we have a slasher one where he shows up on a planet and is basically just the monster in the woods that's chasing after this woman. So yeah, it was really fun because each one was just a one shot where Vader plays a different role, and the art was a different artist every time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I noticed that. I'm looking at the credits and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a really good time on it. It had a little bit of controversy. One of the issues is a woman that works on the Death Star as a nurse for the guy that keeps Vader's cybernetics working.
Okay.
And Vader is sort of abusive to the Doctor because he's Darth Vader, and the Doctor is in turn sort of abusive to the female character, and the female character is in love with Darth Vader. So the story is told inside her imagination, and it's told as a romance story. And somehow, completely inadvertently and unintentionally, we rubbed up against some sort of conflict that was happening in the fan fiction world at that time, where people were being abusive to women that wrote fanfic that was love stories about Darth Vader and Kylo Ren. And they thought our story was implying, was mocking them. 100% didn't know that was happening and didn't know that was a thing.
Wow.
So if you Google that run, there's a little bit of me trying to explain that, no, that wasn't our intention. The character's not supposed to be a joke. That's not what we were doing here.
Wow.
So that's why I don't get into arguments on Twitter, because even when I'm not trying to.
That's awesome, man. Jesus. Oh, Dennis, tell me. All right, so honestly, in when we were setting up the panel for you at Baltimore, we got the Valiant PR people, and they're Dennis Hallum, and he wants to be called Hallum now. So tell me now, and I mean obviously you got Hopeless there on the byline there. So tell where are you on your Hopeless Hallum quest here?
The simple answer is I got divorced, and after my divorce, decided that I was going to have like a new leaf, and I was going to use my real name. And what I did instead was confuse my brand. Like by trying to use Hopeless Hallum or just Hallum on things, all it did was make it confusing. And I have a good friend of mine that's in marketing, and he's like, just stop it. Everybody knows you as Hopeless. Just go back and use Hopeless.
Okay.
That was a bad decision. The funniest way that played out is on Sea of Stars. I co-write with Jason Aaron. And on that book, because Jason's a big name, I'm like, I don't need my name on the cover. I'll use my real name, and this will be a launch pad for Dennis Hallum. Instead, in about half the reviews, everybody assumes Dennis Hallum is a brand new artist who is drawing this book that Jason Aaron wrote because they'd never heard of me before. So yeah, I will answer to Hallum. It's always been my real name, and I have no beef against it. But going forward as a promotional tool, it'll always be Hopeless.
All right, fair enough. That's cool, man. I'll save my Mellencamp jokes for another time. That's all right.
Funny thing about that, my mother is a John Cougar Mellencamp super fan. She's been a photographer for the fan club for about 20 years.
Wow.
She goes to Farm Aid every year.
Wow.
Like my mom is a super fan. Yeah.
Holy shit. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So did she laugh when you were doing the whole Hopeless Hallum thing? And did she comment at all, or?
I guarantee she thought it was funny because of that, but she didn't give me much.
Well, there you go. She's a good mom. That's cool. That's amazing, man. Well, he's right next door in Indiana for Illinois and everything. And I certainly, my entire radio career, was well aware. I mean, going back to my first year in high school radio when I Need a Lover came out.
Right.
So yeah, I know Cougar really well, absolutely, and actually covered the first Farm Aid down in U of I country, Champaign, Illinois, and I saw him there, and I got to interview Lou Reed. That was pretty cool.
I was at the first Farm Aid.
Wow, you were like 10.
Yeah, she used to drag us to all these concerts because it was cheaper than getting a babysitter. So I've seen Mellencamp live probably 15 times.
That's outstanding. That's fantastic. No, hey man, I have a lot of respect for Mellencamp, and I think he's a great songwriter and a great musician. He's amazing. So, well, tell me about the book with Jason. I'm actually going to talk to Jason next week about it.
Yeah, so Jason and I are good friends, and he lives here in Kansas City, and we had talked for years about collaborating on something, but we come about like story ideas very differently. And so anytime he would pitch me something, I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, and I would pitch him something, and he'd be like, well, sounds like a fun scene, but I don't see that as a story. So we would have these frustrating conversations where we tossed ideas around. And then at I believe it was the Kansas City Comic-Con a few years ago, Stephen Green came up. And Stephen Green was an amazing artist who'd done a little bit of Hellboy work, but didn't have his next job figured out. And when I met Stephen, he talked about how he loved Jason Aaron. Jason was one of his favorite writers, and he just really hoped he could work with Jason someday. And I'm like, well, this is an opportunity for me. So I went over to Jason, and I'm like, Stephen loves you. He doesn't have a next project. I know your plate's pretty full, but we'll co-write something, and we'll go tell him. So we went over there, and we lied through our teeth and told him we had this great idea that he'd be perfect for, got him really pumped up. And then we had to figure out a book to do. And because we can't, we're never on the same page story-wise, we kind of smashed two different ideas together into one and figured out a way to write it. So the story is simultaneously the story of a space trucker, basically, who gets lost in space and has to survive to try to get his kid back. And then from the boy's perspective, it's like Huck Finn in space, where this kid gets these superpowers that allow him to swim through space and talk to space alien animal things. And so for him, it's super fun. And the dad goes through the same things, and it's a horror movie where he's just trying to survive and getting beaten up. And Jason writes the adventure part with the kid, and I write all the scenes with the dad. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's super fun. Instead of traditional, tossing the same script back and forth, we just leave each other alone and write our separate parts.
And Stephen does he have a different style for each part of the story?
No,
okay.
Tonally, scene to scene, he like my stuff is usually a little bit inkier, and he leans into the horror of it, but style wise, like the characters all look like they exist in the same world.
Okay.
And as the story has gone on, so we're nearing the end of the second arc. Jason's part's a little darker, and my part's a little weirder. Like the stuff, the worlds as they get closer together start to bleed into each other a little bit, so it makes sense for it all look the same. But
that's great. Here's your pull quote from me: think Over the Top, the Stallone trucker movie with arm wrestling, and Roberto Benigni's Life is Beautiful. Stacked together.
That's better. What we call it is Lone Wolf and Cub meets
Over the Top,
Finding Nemo.
Okay.
But yours is better because over the top.
You got to have Over the Top in there. Come on. And Kenny Loggins' fine love song from Over the Top, Meet Me Halfway.
Isn't that the one where he would turn the hat?
Yes.
Turn it on? Yeah.
Oh my God. And truly, like, that was like the one little moment of joy when I had to play all these sappy love ballads back in my first radio job as an adult contemporary DJ. John Sanders playing favorites, and I would refer to the song as the love theme from Over the Top. And guys would call up and go, "That's fantastic." I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
Awesome.
What a bad movie. Oof. And that kid, you want to smack that kid. Oh, yeah. God. Good Lord. I was just talking about General Hospital. That kid used to be on General Hospital, too. Oof.
I feel like in general, child acting has improved a lot over the past 30 years. It used to be rough with a capital R.
Yes. Thank God, like Stranger Things and what's the Good Boys and everything. No, I agree with you, man. Although that Sling commercial now, where they got Grandpa slinging with his grandson about cartoons, and then the other pops on. Oh my God! When you're home, I got to turn the TV off when I'm working from home. That's my problem. Because God, you see those commercials and you're ready to kill somebody. I'm telling you, it's not good. Ed wants to know. He wants another collaboration with you and Mike Norton telling Chicago-based stories. How did the Dark Horse Answer Project come about? Yeah, how did you get involved in the Answer?
I have actually written, I think, 2 issues of a second arc of the Answer, but both of us are so busy that we never actually did it. So one day might get bored and draw more Answer. The Answer was Mike's thing, and long before I made money in comics and I still had my day job, Kevin Mellon, who's the artist that drew Gearhead, my first book, and Love Struck, my second book, he and I met Mike at a con, and Mike would have us come stay in Chicago whenever we were there for the convention or just come hang out. And so we were buddies with Mike. And Mike had this really weird idea about a superhero with exclamation on his face and like a strange, what's it called?
Origin? What?
The thing that Tom Cruise is involved, Scientology, a Scientology-esque cult that was somehow related to this thing. And he had pages and pages of notes and ideas and weird stuff. And I, at the time, was, like building my comics career and trying to get my second and third projects going. And I'm like, hey, if you're interested, like I could take a look at this and mess with the plot. And so I wrote him a 12-issue, I believe, plot for the Answer. And Mike said, well, let's just do it. Because Mike is a workhorse. Like if Mike decides he's going to do something, he'll just draw the damn thing in 2 weeks. So Mike, he had me write the first issue and he had me write the second issue. And he drew the first one, drew the second one. So a couple years later, we had 2 issues of this thing and we're pitching it around. And somehow he landed at Dark Horse, but they said we had to do it in 4 issues. So I had to figure out how, with 2 issues drawn and ready to go, to make the rest of a 12-issue story fit into those 2.
Wow!
So it was a really cool deal, and it happened right as my Marvel career was kicking off, is when it got picked up. So I was trying to write those issues at the same time I was doing X-Men Season 1 and the Legion of Monsters stuff. It was extremely stressful, but super cool because we did those, and they sat around for a couple years, and then found a home for them. And then we've both been very, very busy ever since. So, yeah, one day maybe more the Answer, but definitely I'd work with Mike again. Mike's a great friend of mine and an amazing artist.
I agree on both of those counts, and also the fact that, it was the Paris Cullins, Len Wein Blue Beetle that I know inspired a
Yes.
lot of the idea, or at least a lot of the physicality, I would say, of the answer.
Yeah, Blue Beetle is Mike's favorite character. Yeah, so obviously.
Yeah, and again, that Ted Cord, like the Ted Cord Blue Beetle and Paris Cullen's run at DC with Len Wein doing the book. I know,
Right.
Mike and I have talked about that a lot. So yeah, it's no, that's good stuff. I remember that absolutely, man. So very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right, and like, can you tell me genres of your creator own stuff coming up? Would that be too much of a giveaway? Or
No. One of them is I'm doing a crime story. It's actually based on my parents. It's based on real stuff that happened to my parents when I was 3.
Wow.
And that has been a thing that's been in the back of my head as something I wanted to mine for a comic or something. And a couple years ago, I just woke up with the perfect comic book structure to make it work, and just never had time to do it. And I can't say who yet, but a friend of mine who's an amazing artist, I sent him the pitch as I was working on it. And he's like, did you send this to me because you want me to tell you it's awesome, or because I'm the perfect person to draw it? And so it just kind of worked out. So that's
great.
Yeah, so it's like a 80s Southern Missouri crime story.
Cool.
Starring my parents. And I've got that going on. I have a weird horror romance thing with another former collaborator at Marvel that I've got going on. I have a book that Scotty Young and I actually conceived the initial version of this together the year his first kid was born. So like 11, 12 years ago.
That's Baxter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Baxter's like as tall as an adult now. And
that's awesome. Yeah.
Scotty gave it back to me years ago because he didn't have time to do it, but that's been repurposed into like a cool, it's like a slice of life 90s teen thing that has a crazy time travel twist thing that I'm doing. But it's set at a lake here in town that I sort of grew up around.
Okay.
So we've got that going on. I have a weird, I don't even know how to, let's call it a fast food fantasy YA story that Chris Grine is another buddy of mine, and I have been tossing around for a decade. And he is currently working on the, I'm not going to remember what it's called, Animorphs adaptations at Scholastic. And
wow.
Yeah, so he's blowing up, and he contacted me and said, hey, are you still interested in doing this thing? Because I think I can fit it in the weird corners of time I've got over the next 2 years. So we're picking away at that. And those are the ones that's easiest to tease.
Okay.
But
no,
yeah,
that's
2 or 3 others.
Wow, 2 or 3 others. Jesus Christ, that's fantastic.
Yeah. No,
honestly, Dennis, I really, that's been half of the conversation is, what have you been working on during our weird times? And it's great to hear that you're doing a lot of creator-owned stuff, and I think it's a great time to, get back to that stuff after all this time. So
yeah, it's as much fun as it is working at the Big Two and getting that steady paycheck and working on the stuff that you loved when you were a kid. At some point, it's really great to go do the world building and the stuff you do when you're coming up. Because the few projects I did, even the ones that didn't come out, whenever I was trying to break in, you get to do anything. Like you can smash different genres together. You can
Sure.
do kid stories or super adult stories, crime stories, this or that. And I didn't realize how much I needed to scratch that itch, like how long it had been. And Sea of Stars kind of reignited it. It's like, oh, that's right. Like we can do whatever we want. We don't have to answer to anybody. This is awesome. And then, yeah, when your job goes away, even temporarily, and you realize like, oh, I gave Marvel all of the power over my income. And whenever things got strange, I should probably be creating IP and doing things that are not only creatively satisfying, but that are stuff that I can own in the future. So it's as scary as it was when I made the decision. At this point, on the other end of it, it's super exciting. And I couldn't be more proud of the stuff that I'm working on.
That's awesome, man. Now, again, I know that you've been doing a lot of Marvel stuff in the last 10 or 12 years, but forgive me, have you done DC stuff that I'm not thinking of? What have you done over there?
I did my DC work. I've done very little, and the first project I did there was a Nightwing. It was basically a Nightwing triad issue that I wrote.
Okay.
it was going to come out as like a breather for the regular creative team. And I turned it in and got it approved the week before Dick Grayson got shot in the head, and they changed his name and that stuff. So I got paid, but it never got drawn.
I wonder if it'll. Oh, okay, it never got drawn because I. That's funny. I literally was talking last week to, and now I'm blanking. Shame on me. Who had the. He has the Suicide Squad story that he wrote 7 or 8 years ago, and it's in that it came out digitally with an ambush bug cover and everything, and it was Harley and whatchamacall story, Harley and Deadshot,
right?
And it was supposedly written to be they didn't want to miss a week during that New 52 push and everything, but yours is during Rebirth, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was it was me getting my foot in the door and talking to editors, because I've been such a Marvel guy for so long that like the only people I knew over there were people who had been at Marvel who moved back. Like I knew Katie Kubert, and I had a couple of contacts, and I'd reach out and we'd talk about stuff. Anyway, this is the first thing that landed. It was fun. I had a good time. Got paid to do it, but it didn't come out. And then I did a very strange Blue Beetle one-shot during the Infected, I think it was called, where the heroes became villains for a couple years ago. Yeah. And yeah, it was Jamie Reyes, Blue Beetle becomes a bad guy basically, and so we sort of did a metamorphosis thing where he turns into it like a literal beetle monster thing by the end of it. So I did that with Freddie Williams. That was the most fun thing. Freddie Williams is another guy that lives here in town. I had never worked with him, so we had a good time on that. But those are the only two things I've ever been paid to do at DC.
Okay.
And I don't know. I'm bad at managing my career. Like Marvel gave me a bunch of work, and I'm not super fast, so I was just like, "Hey, thumbs up, let's do all this." And occasionally, when stuff was starting to end, I would reach out to other places, which is how I wrote the WWE comic for 3 years, just because I like wrestling and tweeted about wrestling, and they offered it to me at the right time. But yeah, for whatever reason, the DC stuff, other than those two things, and nothing ever landed.
Tell me about the WWE comic. What kind of, would you tell stories within the current, story continuity of what was going on weekly and everything?
Yeah, it was actually really fun. In the past, they've always tried to make the wrestlers into superheroes. So they would exaggerate it and try to do that. And wrestling fans don't want that. Like, that's not what they're interested in. So what I pitched was sort of what I did with X-Men Season 1, actually. I'm like, why don't we take the storylines from the TV show and then expand that and show what's going on around those raindrops? And, we can tell a bigger story or the outside the world story and build the characters up and the drama outside of that. And they loved that idea. And I was able to take, storylines from the previous 2 and 3 years and tie them together. But what ended up happening, and what the fans really gravitated towards, which wasn't the intention, is wrestling storylines change on a dime, and we just pretend they make sense. Because if something starts to kick off, it'll head in a different direction. So what I would do is fix the continuity. Like I would go and write stories that explained jumps and logic and strange timing to make it make sense. And the fans couldn't get enough of it. It was really, really well received in the WWE wrestling community. So we had a blast.
That's awesome, man. That's hilarious. So, and Ed, I appreciate it, but as Dennis was talking, I did realize that it was Jim Zub, who I spoke to recently, that had a Suicide Squad book that is now out digitally and stuff. I mean, that's the thing. It's there's a lot of inventory stuff that both companies, you just have stuff in the drawers, and it's like, God, there's a lot of interesting stuff. All the Tomorrow's magazines, that was like half their grist for articles and stuff would be like, hey man, look at this! Wow, Barry Windsor Smith did this Iron Man story, and it's never been published. And it's like, what are you gonna do? So. That's awesome, Dennis. I'm very excited for you, and I'm excited for the stuff that's coming up. And obviously, when you're ready to talk about the creator-owned stuff, please come back.
Yes, no, absolutely. I will be shouting from the rooftops.
Excellent, man. I always feel like I gotta make up for that first interview that me, Dennis, and Kevin did for Gearhead, where I hey, I really don't like
Gearhead.
It was.
You were definitely not interviewing about Gearhead. The first thing you said at the beginning of the interview was that we gave you our first sample before we were published of our first book, and that you thought it was really cool that we'd made it, but you didn't care for it. And so that was the first thing. And the whole rest of the interview, I'm trying to well, he doesn't like my work. Why are we talking? And I was a huge fan. That's the other thing, is I've been listening to Word Balloon since I was working the register at a comic shop in the first year you started doing it.
Yeah, I understand. Jesus.
And so at the time, I was like starstruck that we were even on the show. And then you just pissed right in my Wheaties.
I know, and that's seriously, man. I die 1,000 deaths thinking about it, and that's why I'm happy to bring it up and take the spanking that I so deserve and everything. So, what the fuck do I know? I'm that idiot at Decca Records telling the Beatles, guitars are on the way out. Thanks anyway. See you later. But wait, we're really interesting. Yeah, we don't care. We don't care. So that's all right. But no, hey, man. Again, history has proven the talent for both of you guys, and I really happy for both of you guys. You guys are doing great, and yeah, that's why. Anytime we need to talk, let me know, and we'll do a new one, and we'll talk about all the new create our own stuff.
I would love to. It was good to catch up. We haven't because there's no cons. We haven't talked in forever.
I know, literally. I mean, that's what I was saying. I forget who I was talking to. I'm like, oh God, it was, and I was telling him, I'm like, yeah, Tony Moore used to do a CincyCon, and I go, like, Dennis and I were on the flight back to O'Hare, and so we hung out basically for a couple hours just chatting. So, absolutely, buddy. Well, great seeing you. I'm glad you're doing well. I hope the family's doing okay.
Yep, we're great.
Excellent. And my best to the KC people. I'm sure you talk to them in some fashion, so.
Yeah, it's -6 degrees right now, so it's Zoom fashion. But yeah,
Well, I'm right ahead of we're just east of you, obviously, and it's 15 degrees right now in Chicago, so we're not that much better. But yeah. So yeah, I know, mountain of snow.
Yep, it's been ugly, but spring is coming soon, right?
Yes, and regardless, thank God, daylight savings time is coming back soon. So that's going to be nice in a couple of weeks and a nice relief. So, all right, buddy, enjoy your February. Good seeing you.
All right, man. You too.
We'll talk. Thanks, buddy. Excellent. Dennis Hopeless, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Tomorrow, double feature on Word Balloon. Derek Robertson in the afternoon and Brian Azzarello in the evening. Two for the price of one on Word Balloon Wednesday. So I hope you'll join me for that. And again, thank you, Dennis. Have a good night. And everybody take care. Stay safe. Stay happy.